title piece.
The excellent.
I order.
Has an.
I as.
The organ.
I as.
Organ has.
Through.
Organ.
The order.
My eye.
The excellent.
Attention I.
Has an. Order.
Of I.
Attention by.
Of my.
Through I.
My three.
Multiples.
My order.
Divide multiple.
Divide.
Have organ.
Of I.
By three.
Of mine. My three.
The ear.
The ear.
The order.
As key.
Is what?
Of hearing.
Have.
Is sound.
The organ.
Excellent.
Round.
In sound.
Opening.
Here.
The order.
The ear.
The order.
The ear.
Of hearing.
As keys.
Is what?
Have.
In sound.
The organ.
Round.
Opening.
Sound.
The eye.
The organ.
The ears.
As an.
Key sound.
As keys.
Organ of.
I have
Have.
Excellent.
excellent round.
Excellent.
Order.
Opening.
Sound.
As keys.
Organ of.
I have
Have.
Excellent.
excellent round.
Excellent. And this is an arrangement of some aphorisms by Wallace Stevens called Adagia by Laurie Schneider. No,
Okay. It is life that we're trying to get to in poetry.
It is life.
that we are trying to get to in poetry.
It is life
Life.
that we are trying to get in poetry. The poem,
Is in nature.
Created by the poet.
the poet,
Comes to words.
As nature comes to dry sticks,
the poet represents
the mind
in the act of,
defending us against itself.
The poet is a god.
or the young poet is a god.
The old poet is a tramp.
Poetry is a sense.
Poetry is a form of melancholia.
Poetry is a means of redemption.
Poetry is the war of the mind.
Poetry is a pheasant disappearing in the brush.
The poem
Is a nature.
Created by the poet.
A poet looks at the world as
A man.
looks at
a woman. The poet makes silk dresses out of worms.
Every poem is a poem within a poem.
The poem of the idea.
within the poem of the words.
Every poem
Is a poem within the poem.
The poem of the idea.
within the poem of the word.
The final poem will be the poem of fact in the language of fact.
But it will be the poem of facts not realized before. Poetry must be irrational.
Poetry is the sense.
Poetry is a form of melancholia.
Poetry is a means of redemption.
Poetry is the cure of the mind.
Poetry is a pheasant disappearing in the brush.
The
The poem is a nature created by the poet.
Poetry must be irrational.
The poem is a pheasant.
A poem is a meteor. The poem reveals itself only to the ignorant man.
All poetry is experimental.
All poetry
Is experimental.
All poetry
is experimental.
All poetry.
Is experimental.
All poetry is experimental.
All poetry.